Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Bullpen with Adam the Bull, brought to you by Bet Rivers. Bet Rivers players who place a same-game parlay of at least $10 on NCAA football games or NFL games will receive an entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning Squares can earn up to a $50 bonus bet per entry. See the Bet Rivers app or website for more details. You see him there from The Athletic. Joins us every other week. Zac Jackson. Zac, how are you today?
Good, Bull. How are you?
I'm great. There's actually, we're in a rare situation covering the Browns right now. It's a common situation that the Browns suck in December.
Yeah.
But what's unusual is there's actually two very fascinating storylines.
Right.
One, of course, Myles Garrett. The other, of course, Shedeur Sanders. So big shocker. We'll start there with Shedeur coming off, obviously, his best game this past week. Created some buzz with the fans, obviously, even some who were skeptical. But he played really well. But now he's playing a better team in Chicago, a team that has has forced more turnovers than any other team in the league. Obviously, the weather's going to be terrible in Chicago. What are your expectations for Shedeur this week, Zac?
It's interesting, Bull. I think with the offensive line, the situation that it's in, I think it's going to be tough on Shedeur. Now, he was really impressive against the pressure last week. Bigger picture, you said it, right? There are familiar elements to this, and this is unfamiliar. And I want to give credit to Shedeur. I didn't think there was much growth from start one to start two, right? And the Browns got in a bad spot, and he wasn't able to respond. Right. And last week, I thought he played his best half in the first half. I thought he played a really awful third quarter. Not all his fault, but he makes one really awful throw. The Titans take the lead, and then he responds in the fourth. So, big picture, Bull, I think the fact that we're nitpicking him says he's got some talent. And what he's put on in all three games says he's got some talent. And when you look at the situation, there's clearly some excitement here. There's clearly opportunity here. And there's clearly a player who's growing and has room to grow and gives you something to be excited about. So I'm more into just the whole experience for Shedeur this week, right? The elements probably going to be losing in the first of 3 straight games where the team on the other side is playing for their playoff lives. Right. And so we probably didn't need Kevin Stefanski to make it official, but it's good that he did. The players know. So to me, more than the numbers, this is about continued growth. This is about the team rallying behind him. And this is about Shedeur handling good and bad these next 3 weeks, because I think he's in a really difficult spot on Sunday for many reasons.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you have essentially all backup offensive linemen outside of a Joel Bitonio who's going to retire at the end of the year. So
and who hasn't practiced all week because he's got 2 injuries.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. Not uncommon for him this time of the season. So it is interesting. And we talked a little, obviously, on UCSS yesterday, but I think there's a scenario that I sometimes this world seems so extreme. He's either the guy or not the guy. And most likely, you're going to be at the end of the season thinking he could be the guy, but I'm not sure yet. And maybe the Browns will be in a situation at the end of the year where, and we maybe didn't think this was possible, but maybe they'll be in a situation where they're not going to take a quarterback, either because they don't think any of them are worth taking in the first round, or they're not picking high enough to take them, depending on the tiebreakers. And maybe you say, hey, let's build around, let's take those 3 top 35, 40 picks, get 2 offensive linemen and a wide receiver, and let's see what Shedeur looks like with those guys, and then we can make the final decision at the end of next year. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And I think it was always for Shedeur about coming back next year, regardless of what the situation is, and we still don't know what it will be.
Right.
But the best version of Shedeur is one we're going to see after an offseason in the weight room, after an offseason of processing all that he experienced this year, good and bad, all that he did good and bad, all that he learned, regardless of whether his coaches are back or not, right? And then go forward. He's the talent is there, and in the accuracy and in the way he layers some of the passes, like it's really good. There's other things that need worked on, and we heard Tommy Rees talk about the footwork. Obviously, just the experience of the huddle, the game week, defense is adjusting. I think the biggest thing, Bull, that we're not talking about, anytime you're coaching a rookie QB, and we've seen this a million times in Cleveland, he's got a limited playbook, regardless of what you think his background is or how you've brought him up. And defenses are just going to give him things that he hasn't seen and try to confuse him. Well, now they've seen him for 3 whole games. They're going to be doing things that they think can attack his weaknesses and really give him fits. They're not just out there trying to give him different looks. So it's a whole new step of evaluation. Do I think he can do it? Sure. Do I think in an ideal world that the Browns never live in, that the answer would be clear outside of all our blustering and talking about it? He either is or isn't. It's probably not going to be that. There's probably going to be some gray area. And frankly, because we don't know who's going to be making the decisions and because we don't know what and who is really going to be available in the top 5, in the top 3, in the top 7. I mean, he beats one of these teams, they're out of the top 6.
Yeah, definitely.
So until we see all that, we can't know. But is it more than fair to say that these next 3 games are a real opportunity for him to do that, to put himself in top of mind, to ingratiate himself with the locker room who has to count on this, right? And then say, hey, going forward, you know what, if we play him next year and then we're in the 2027 business, if it doesn't work out, or we finally found this guy, like the path is there, the runway is there. And I could keep talking in circles for 5 minutes, but like just take the good with the bad. And if he keeps growing, then it kind of makes sense before we dive through all the other options to say, you know what, you should probably play this kid and see if he can continue to get better, because there's lots of reasons to think that he can get better. And that's without even saying he's eventually going to be this. He's eventually going to be average. He's eventually going to be great. Right. Like everybody wants to jump to the conclusions and make one series or one game like the story of his career. And it's not. But if you keep seeing steps, it's exciting, and not just because we haven't seen that here in so long.
Right. But what we have seen, and what you've seen forever, is a lot of shitty quarterbacks. Yes. We know what shitty quarterbacks look like in this town.
We do.
And again, we don't know what his ceiling is or what he's going to end up being. But I think you're right. I mean, I've seen enough in 3 weeks that I'm pretty confident he's not a shitty quarterback. If nothing else, like there's stuff there, and it feels like there's a lot of room for growth. How high that growth is, that's up. Ultimately, I hate to say it because I don't trust his judgment. Ultimately, it's up to Jimmy Haslam, because Jimmy Haslam's going to decide at the end of the year, do I stick with the current guys or do I move on to new guys? And if I move on to new guys, and if I like Shedeur, well, I got to get new guys that believe in Shedeur. And if I don't like Shedeur, well, I got to get new guys who have somebody else in mind.
Yeah, and that's another interesting part here, Bull, that we can't really predict. You would like to believe that the decision has been made, whether these guys are staying or they're going.
Good point.
However, for 2 reasons, we don't know that. One, it's the Browns, it's Jimmy Haslam, and that's probably 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But the other one is there is enough season left for minds to change.
Sure,
there really is. Right, this is a good rookie class, and it's probably a great rookie class. It's too early to put him in Canton, right? But this is a great rookie class, and obviously if Shedeur is part of it, it gets better. There are obvious mistakes that have been made and holes in this roster, and huge decisions going forward on what this thing will look like. But like, probably that decision should have been made on what they want to do. But what makes this so fascinating is, like, if he plays 2 really good games, if he clearly is showing growth in how he's leading the team, commanding the Thursday practice, commanding the huddle in the second quarter after something goes wrong, then it's like, you know what? We should want to do everything we can in this offseason to give this guy better pieces and give him every chance. Because it's really not even about next year. You know, they can't help but be worse. We thought that. Can't help but be better. We thought that last year. The schedule looks a ton easier. Who knows how all that goes. But like, yes, if you could finally, for the first time since Baker Mayfield, have a guy who shows you something, and then build around him, and then start to plan around him. And for the Browns specifically now, it's burying themselves out of this cap situation. It's making more right decisions than not, and dealing with all their players who are 30 or nearing 30 and have all of this money. If you can have this guy, now you're on a track. Because right now you can't convince me that they've built anything. They have a great defense that's been completely wasted. They have a great rookie class that's on their way. They're 6 months in to their pro careers, right?
Yeah.
If Shedeur is the answer, and if you can do things with him in mind and continue to see growth these next 3 games, the start of next year, now you're on a path to, hey, let's judge how far we are. Let's judge what really we have to tackle as we get to the last phase of getting out of this Watson disaster.
Let's talk about the other big storyline. That's Myles Garrett. Obviously, he had a sack last week. He now has 3. I said the other day, I was like, he only had 1 sack, as if that's not, good. 20 sacks. He needs 3 sacks. Or 3, in the final
3 for the record.
To break the record. Any doubt in your mind he's going to get there?
No doubt. It is. You said it all, right? When you look at the last 2 games and say, well, he's only had 1 sack. Well, like, this is what we're talking about. He has 20. He's the 13th guy to ever get to 20. The next closest guy has 13.
Insane.
He's also going to set the tackles for loss record, right? Like he in mid-October he had 5 sacks. Now he has 20 2 weeks before Christmas.
Nuts.
Like it's nuts. So with 4 games left, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to get there. I thought the Titans really had the offensive game plan that I've wondered why more teams haven't had last week. And obviously the circumstances kept it there. The Titans' number one goal was to not let Myles Garrett get the record and to run the ball. They succeeded in both. I think you'll see a lot of that from the Bears. But no doubt in my mind over these next few weeks, will he get it? No doubt in my mind, is he going to continue to crush it? And it's made it interesting. So a colleague of mine came up to me before the game last Sunday, and he said, I got something to pick with you. And I said, well, take a number first. And he said, you talked on your podcast about Myles having this season kind of justifying that the Browns are right to keep him. Yeah. And he goes, I think it kind of says the other way. And I said, that's an interesting thought. And so that's kind of where we are with this whole thing, right? Like the Bears are talking about this game in the last 4 and what they need to do, and what getting to January will really tell them about their team. Right. So we're talking a little bit about that, but we're talking so many different things about where this team is and how close it can be, and what the moves have to be going forward. And so, yes, you don't want to see Myles Garrett play anywhere else. And I ultimately think this GM did not want to be the GM who traded for Deshaun Watson and traded away Myles Garrett.
Right.
But Myles Garrett turns 30 in 2 weeks. And even if he's very much in his prime, and it looks like it, he's certainly paid like it. Like, is he ever going to play in big games in December again? And that's far from a guarantee.
Yeah.
The stadium is going to close without this team ever having hosted a playoff game.
Well, and the stadium is most likely going to close with Ben Roethlisberger and Joe Flacco being 2nd and 3rd in wins. And obviously Flacco got most of those wins, not from
right. No, Shedeur is the only hope of derailing that.
That's right.
Right.
Which is just, I mean, Baker Mayfield.
Well, I guess Joe Flacco could still chase down Baker.
Yeah, right.
The pace that he's on.
It's just nuts. In terms of the defense, you talked about the Titans, using Myles Garrett's aggressiveness kind of against him and against them. The defense, by far their worst performance against an offense that's even more inept than the Browns, which is hard to believe. But obviously you're playing good to excellent offenses the rest of the way. Was it just that? Was it what do you make of how poorly the defense played, and what's your expectations for the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they missed Malik Collins,
no doubt,
first and foremost. I think they missed some tackles, right? And Tony Pollard made them pay. But it was more the blueprint that we've seen going back to the Houston playoff game 2 years ago, and at various times early where teams had specific ways they were going to attack. Yeah. And the defensive tackles that were in there were not good in run defense, right? And Pollard cut back one time, and 2 Browns players ran into each other, and it was just kind of a clown show. So I do think it will be kind of that blueprint going forward, and that's just how it goes in this league. So, when the Browns are good, they're in the backfield, they're disrupting you, and they're stopping your run before it gets started, and they're putting you in those must-pass situations where Myles really eats. So interesting cat and mouse now going forward with how they adjust to that and how they can keep them. I mean, the Bears are not going to have a Dunze, who's probably been their number 1 receiver, but Moore and Burden are both guys who can run end around, jet sweep, tunnel screen, stuff that you use to attack. And they obviously have 2 running backs who are going really well. They both had 100 yards against the Eagles just 2 weeks ago. So I think the Bears will be super conservative on offense early, and I think eventually they'll force a turnover and pull away. But and Myles probably gets 1, and we go on to the next game, and he probably wants to break it at home anyway. But again, you can never rule it out because this guy just does insane things.
Yeah, 3 definitely does not seem like too many sacks to get. Zach, great stuff as always, man. Appreciate the time, and I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
All right, see you, Bull.
There you go.